once we were told the season was totally canceled, then that kind of stung a little bit.
It's definitely a tough situation, going back home and not really knowing what the future kind of holds.
I think the hardest part was thinking about when that hockey would come back.
Those kids lost out on a season and a half of their most crucial development.
Moms and wives and kids didn't see dad for 4 months. That breaks my heart.
This was going to be a tough road ahead for everyone.
At the time I was playing in Oshawa for the Oshawa Generals, and we had a meeting called where the general manager spoke to us and wasn't too sure when we would get called back, whether it would be a week, a month, 2 weeks, nobody really knew. And we never got the call back because COVID took over here, so.
I was going home and I was trying to stay in shape because we thought we were coming back. And then we kind of started to get an idea that it wasn't going to happen, so guys started kind of leaning off the training a little bit, and then they finally told us that the season was canceled. I think it was about a month later.
I was in Drummondville and I was injured, and then about a day before I was supposed to get back from my injury, our coaches had a meeting and they said that with COVID going on now, everyone's got to get sent home. So no one really knew what was going on. Everyone just kind of expected it to be like 2 weeks to like a month. But then we ended up, going into that lockdown.
At that moment, I don't think any of us really knew how serious it would be. So from that point, we were all expecting to get called back. It was my last year in Oshawa in playing junior, so that didn't even really click. I didn't realize that would really be my last day there with the team. So once we were told the season was totally canceled, then that kind of stung a little bit.
Going into your last year in the OHL, you're kind of excited because you're finally the oldest guy and like a leader in the room and all that. So it sucked losing that last year, but a lot of people had it a lot worse than we did. So everyone kind of sacrificed something from COVID. But yeah, it was definitely unfortunate.
I was in my 20-year-old year when when COVID was going on, and I didn't get to play that year because of COVID. And then after that, it was hard for me to find a team to commit to, just because I didn't have enough junior experience. But I reached out to Ryerson, and I'm really grateful for the opportunity that they gave me.
Yeah, the pandemic really it reminds you like why you play and like why you love it so much, because you can lose out a little bit in a long season in junior hockey and whatnot. So it's been really good that way, and yeah, making me just super fortunate I'm still able to play and play at this school.
When we first kind of heard the news from our school, we thought we were going to kind of be back after a little extended March break. So I think for the first month, it didn't really set in that, I wouldn't be going back for the rest of the year, and let alone an extra year after that. So yeah, we were in the middle of midterms too. So I was kind of focused on school and kind of thought that I'd be going back soon.
I was at Ohio State and we had just won the WCHA championship. And we were on kind of a roll moving forward and looking forward to the NCAAs. And the initial shock was quite devastating. But in the end, I think that we all thought it was not as serious as it actually was. So we were all willing to sacrifice in that moment. But I think in the grand scheme of things, we became more understanding of what actually was going on.
Well, I knew the World Championship was canceled right before my last college game, so ECAC finals versus Cornell. Me and my teammate Claire Thompson, we were supposed to play on that play on that roster, and we found out kind of the night before. So we kind of just like made light of the situation and said, well, like we don't have to save ourselves for Worlds. Like we might as well go win a ECAC championship. And that's what we did. So that was really cool. And I don't think it hit me for a really long time that the NCAAs got canceled. But it's just like cool to think back that, you know, my last college game, we won a championship for our school. And I think that's what everyone kind of goes back to instead of thinking about, you know, we never got our chance to compete in a Final 8.
They gathered us together and announced to us that the championships were canceled. And to be honest, that's probably one of the hardest news I've heard as an athlete in a long time. I was kind of lost. I didn't really have any closure to the season, and we were so close. All the teams were ready to fly in. Actually, some of them were already on their way, and I really didn't know how to handle it at first. When I went back home for a week, I was a little bit lost, to be honest. You know, we worked so hard for 2 years, especially through COVID. You know, I had a lot of workouts on my own and small groups and things, you know, in basements and bedrooms, outside. You know, we just found ways to get it done. And it was really, really devastating as an athlete not to have, you know, closure like that.
Definitely, there are a lot of tough days, you know, in a pandemic, being locked in, you know, your childhood home, back at home when you've been at school for the last 2 years. You know, I kind of needed something to focus on and needed something to work towards. So kind of in that way, I guess my whole life kind of shifted towards, you know, getting centralized and being here now. And it kind of eliminated the distraction of school and everything else that was going on.
I actually did a lot of training over Zoom with some of the teams I trained back in Toronto, and I tried to make it as fun as I could for the girls. I think, you know, that's one thing as a kid I couldn't imagine not being able to go to hockey every single day and going to the rink and seeing my friends and my teammates. And so I think it was really special to me that I maybe got a chance to, you know, maybe have a bright spot in their day, and they can just, you know, do hockey and for an hour. And you know, even though it wasn't in person, I think it was really special for me to try and, you know, keep hockey going a little bit. I think it was really hard for especially the young kids in sports.
I think women's hockey certainly was hurt in many ways by the pandemic. I can speak specifically to the PWHPA and what we've been doing. We had a lot of momentum coming into early 2020. We had just secured a number of NHL club relationships, and we had hosted a number of really successful events in year one. And it really felt like we were moving towards the type of professional future that we hope for the sport. And then everything shut down. And of course, you know, there's many bigger issues than just sport when it came to that. But at the same time, to see, you know, professional sports teams struggling and financially being strapped, I think we all realized that this was going to be a tough road ahead for everyone. Obviously, health number one, but secondly, when it comes to professional sport and entertainment. And I don't think we realized how devastating it was going to be for major corporations, including many professional sport teams.
We were in nationals. We were in PEI when I got suspended. We were there for 4 days, and we were supposed to play the Friday morning. There was games that played the Thursday, so we had good hopes that we were going to be playing that Friday. We got a call from the officials around 9 p.m. on the Thursday night to say that the tournament was canceled. So it's very hard and emotional time. We were lucky that we were all together in PEI, so we were able to kind of be there for each other and get through it together.
It was hard because I'd been playing hockey like nonstop since I was 4 years old, pretty much, and like to abruptly stop like that after so long was just really challenging, I think.
Coaches and strength and conditioning team had a program for us, and based on whatever equipment we had, whether it was body weight workouts or some types of weights or a full gym, they adapted it to what we could do. And there's also a frozen pond just around the corner from our house, so we were able to go a couple times a week and go on the ice because we only had 6 official practices last season. So it was a big turnaround this year, but thankfully we were still able to do some type of on ice and a ton of off ice stuff.
Yeah, I think it's been a lot, but we are handling it really well, and I think we're looking really good going into this season.
we had won our state championship. We were supposed to go in second week of March break. We were supposed to go to Michigan for nationals. And I just remember the news being broken that nationals were canceled. Nobody really knew what was going on. We were just thinking we were getting an extra week of March break, but we were missing some hockey. And so don't think anyone really took it too seriously, myself included, because we didn't really know what was going on. We didn't know the severity of the situation. But I just remember hoping and being disappointed that nationals was going to be canceled. Obviously, it ended up being my only chance to go, and it was taken away from me, which is unfortunate, but happened to so many people. COVID has obviously taken a lot from everyone. And if I'm going to sit here and look back on missing a week out in Michigan playing a hockey tournament versus the lot of kind of injustices that COVID's kind of uncovered, I think that it would be foolhardy of me to do that. And I think that obviously it was really unfortunate for me to miss that. And I was really disappointed, but I just figured that I could make the best of my unfortunate situation and look forward to just develop as a player, keep moving forward, use whatever resources I could.
Yeah, I'll be honest. It was definitely like a difficult time. It was definitely hard as like all the weeks went on and time went on, and you just kept getting worse news of the cases and everything getting shut down. It was hard to see an end to it, right? The second year, kind of like our second year, seeing that get taken away from us was definitely difficult. And I just try to keep high spirits the whole time and trust that something would come. And now that this season's come and it's off to a good start, hopefully you just keep going from there with my career. I think the hardest part was kind of thinking about when that hockey would come back. Because we thought it would be 2 weeks, I was super excited to get back right away. And then, it gets pushed back, and not having that hockey, it was just like the unknown of when it would come back. That was the biggest issue, I think, for me. Kind of the biggest message that we have in our room is like anything to play. So whether we can't warm up in a certain area because there's fans there and we got to kind of social distance, so be it. We're going to find another spot and we'll warm up somewhere else to get that game in, right? Anything to play. And I think we've all kind of adopted that. And as for coming up in the future, I mean, we just got a pretty packed house last night for our home opener, and it's nice to see that stuff's kind of easing up. That's all we can pray for, right? It's not really up to me as of now, but it'd be nice.
I was playing in Pittsburgh at the time, and basically USA Hockey just released a statement that said that the season was canceled, and we were kind of we were on our own devices basically, and things were just shutting down left and right. So we couldn't, there wasn't really much available to us as, players and athletes. Gyms were shutting down. All the rinks were basically shut down. So yeah, it was really tough. And my family was going through a move at the time. So that even left less time for, obviously the border was shut down. So they couldn't just come and visit whenever they wanted to. And then we were also playing in the bubble here in Canada. So it was a full lockdown. Not even my billet mom could come see me. So it was really, emotionally tough on all the guys here. There was lots of FaceTime calls with parents, and we just tried to stay as close as we could.
Well, I think, obviously for many of us, it felt like the pandemic really started when the NBA shut down and then followed by multiple professional sports leagues. I think that was a signal that this was really happening. Shortly after, I think it was really a question around how long is this going to be? I remember thinking, well, it'll be a couple months and, by the summer, by the fall. So it really just kind of, I think, trying to continue to keep up with it, learn more, understanding the severity and the seriousness of it. And then really with no endpoint in sight was what created, the biggest challenges for all of us.
So Ryan just packed up from Saginaw, left, I think, the majority of his stuff at the billet house, and he packed up his stuff and drove home. And the same for Nick. Nick just said, I guess we're gonna, take a couple weeks and we're gonna be shut down. But those couple of weeks turned into months. her whole life stopped at that moment, going, is there ever going to be a chance to play hockey again? Nick was able to go back and do the bubble, and so at least he got back into the swing of things. But again, it was COVID testing every day. It was staying in a hotel, couldn't go anywhere, couldn't do anything. They were basically locked in their hotel rooms and they couldn't do anything. Ryan went to World Juniors at Christmas time last year. And so that time was a little bit, scarier because we're putting him on a plane to fly to Alberta, and things in Alberta weren't as good as it were here in Ontario. So that the whole province thing worried me a lot. And then, they had to quarantine there for 2 weeks, and then they had to do the tryouts and everything. And then a couple of the kids got COVID, and so there was another quarantining for 2 weeks. And I just felt for Ryan, because all he wanted to do was to get back on skates and play hockey. And he hadn't played hockey since March of 2020. And this is now December of 2020. This was his opportunity to get back on skates and prove himself and make it onto the World Junior team. And so I was very grateful for that, but it was very frightening when you found out there was other kids that had COVID, and they're that close together. And so that worried me a bit, but Ryan kept assuring us everything's fine, everything's fine. But as a parent, you want to run. I wanted to fly out to Alberta and be in the room with him, but I couldn't. But that's your first instinct as a mother, is to go and help and protect your child. Ryan did get sick with COVID in Chicago so it was in April. He, we protected both of them as best we could from March of 2020 to we tried to keep them away from groups of people and not telling them to go out and to wear their masks and to hand sanitize. And, we had a few scares during the summer of 2020, but knock on wood, none of us caught the virus. And then, Ryan goes in, in April to do his regular testing, the AHL, and he tests positive, and he's like, that can't be right. Like, I feel fine. And next day, tested positive again. And so they said, you got COVID. You got to quarantine for 2 weeks. And this kid has been quarantined so much. Nick hasn't had to go through that quarantining as much as Ryan has. But I felt for Ryan, because he's been in quarantine quite a lot. Probably about 3 months out of this whole COVID thing, he's been in quarantine. It's hard being here and your child is somewhere else. And he will always be my child. I know he's 22 and Ryan's 20, but they're always going to be my children. And as parents, we always worry about them no matter what. I think COVID has put a lot of stress on a lot of the hockey players' families. I know that some of the players on Nick's team had their family back in the US, and they couldn't see them for months. They didn't see dad for 4 months. That breaks my heart. And those moms and wives and kids had to stay strong for their dad because they were doing the job. So for that reason, I hope it goes back to normal, that people can come and go to come see their kids play or fly to see their parents when they have a break in the season and whatnot, or have them come up to visit and not have to be separated because of the protocols. During this time, family is the most important thing in your life to get you through the hard parts. And being separated from families, I don't know how those guys did it. Nothing beats getting a hug from your wife, your mom, your kids. Nothing. That human touch, everybody needs that human touch. To be able to watch the NHL again was just amazing. I missed sitting here on a Friday, Saturday night watching the NHL, watching our kid play, or watching any kind of we missed watching the OHL and the AHL and whatnot. But and I'm I couldn't wait. I could not wait for hockey to start again. Couldn't wait. It got us through a lot of stress. hockey, and it was 3 hours out of my day I didn't have to think about COVID and the impacts that it's had, not just on our family, but on the province, as the world as a whole. It was just time out of the day where I didn't think about COVID whatsoever. I can't wait for things to kind of go back to normal, what we had before, but it's still going to be a lot of things that we have to catch up on.
When you talk about something like the OHL, where like 85 to 90% of the revenue is gate, well, now you've just chopped them out from underneath them. Not only that, OHL teams kind of bring this sense of community to their towns, whether they're out doing Meals on Wheels or bringing little schools to sing the national anthems, or they're going and talking about bullying at school, like just the little things that can have an impact on someone who's 10 or 12 years old. I think from that perspective, they were really hindered by that. And the OHL not playing at all was a huge problem, because some of your biggest development years are between 16 and 21, and those kids lost out on a season and a half of their most crucial development. And so kids are going to be not where they're supposed to be from a hockey perspective, because they lost that 18 months of absolutely crucial development, which is why you saw some teams strategically stayed away from the CHL and particularly the OHL in the past 2 drafts, because they knew that these players were not going to be playing.
From a scouting point of view, you're now trying to scout players that you haven't seen in a year. And you're trying to do it based on watching their video from a year earlier, which is their first year in the OHL, which for many of them is a very difficult and challenging experience. Like they're going from being Mr. Everything on their minor hockey team, their power play, their penalty kill. If they're up a goal, they're on the ice. If they're down a goal, they're on the ice. And then they go to the OHL and they're playing 4 minutes a game or 6 minutes a game, and then they're in and out of the lineup. And those are tough transitions. And there's very few that just step in and instantly become impact players in the OHL. I think there is a huge value to being in the building with your own eyes. I do think you can supplant it with adding to video, but I guess then, one question that gets posed is, okay, if I go and watch a guy 10 times, is watching him on video 20 more going to change that? And if it does change it, are you going to take the video side over your own eyes?
I think that I respect being in the room a lot more. I don't take it as, for granted. When we come in at 7 in the morning, we meet here, it's not like as much of a pain or I respect it more. I actually like coming here, not that I didn't before, but it's not as much of a chore. I'm blessed to have that chance.
And I'm grateful for a lot more. I'm grateful for when my family can come see me, or when they're able to watch a game.
I think we all know and believe that sport unites people. It was a major trigger for many of us realizing that the pandemic was actually happening, was when sports shut down, as I mentioned. So I think sports opening up again is making people feel like there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and we all acknowledge we're not quite there yet. But the idea of seeing athletes out there competing, fans socializing, supporting their teams, we want to put sport back out there.
Nice.